At the beginning of the story, the protagonist Duncan is introduced. He is a squire to a low-born knight. He possesses neither land nor any formal title. After his mentor, Sir Arlan, dies of illness, Duncan buries him beneath a large tree. As an inheritance from Sir Arlan, he receives only a set of worn-out armor, 3 spirited horses, and the simple knightly mindset of protecting the weak. Duncan has not a penny in his pocket, so he decides to pose as a knight and participate in the Ashford tournament. If he can win this competition, Duncan can overcome his poverty and prove his worth. On the way, he stops at an inn where he meets a short, bald-headed boy. Mistaking him for the inn's stable boy, Duncan entrusts his 3 horses to the boy's care. There were no notable guests in this quiet little inn, save for a drunkard slumped over table. The innkeeper's wife guessed that this tall man was also heading to the Ashford competition. She informed Duncan that the tourney grounds were still another day's ride away and that half the town's population had already flocked there. The owner's wife, however, was quite annoyed by it all. In her opinion, what is the difference between a knight and a common man? They cannot change the price of eggs, my lord. The strange drunk man went upstairs muttering. Fearing his true identity might be exposed, Duncan decided to leave. But upon going outside, he found the bald boy wearing his mentor's armor and sitting atop his horse. Duncan quickly pulled the boy down, but the boy was not afraid at all. Instead, he remarked, "I have never seen a knight like you whose sword belt is made of braided rope." When the boy heard Duncan was going to the tourney, he insisted on tagging along. In reality, the boy was no stable hand. He claimed to be an orphan named Egg and wanted to become Duncan's squire or personal assistant. Seeing Egg's condition reminded Duncan of his own past. However, considering himself a fake knight, he thought it wouldn't be right to ruin another's life. So, he tossed a copper penny at Egg and rode away. At that moment, Duncan did not know that the boy he rejected was actually a runaway Targaryen prince hiding his identity, Aegon Targaryen. After dawn broke, he arrived at the tourney grounds. The place was teeming with people and festive with celebration. Duncan found some soldiers and asked to speak with the chief steward of the tournament. The soldiers led him to the office. The steward noticed the copper penny on the hilt of Duncan's sword, but he had never heard of Sir Arlan of Pennytree. Furthermore, Duncan had no lord or baron to vouch for him. The steward warned him that the consequences of lying could be dire, then laughed as he finished speaking. In truth, he didn't care who was a peasant and who was a knight. He thought it would be quite a spectacle to see a poor peasant charge at Lionel Baratheon. Lionel Baratheon was the heir to Storm's End. Regardless, rules were rules. The steward told Duncan to find someone who knew Arlan and could vouch for him. Fortunately, upon arrival, Duncan had spotted a tent flying the banner of House Dondarrion. Manfred Dondarrion was present there. Years ago, Sir Arlan had served under his father, so if Manfred agreed to vouch for him, the problem would be solved. The steward couldn't believe the boy had such audacity. Duncan went to Manfred Dondarrion's tent. A scantily clad woman emerged and said the knight had fallen asleep. It would cost a silver coin to wake him, but Duncan did not have that kind of money. The woman mocked him, saying, "I have never seen a knight as poor as you. You had better go look towards the woods." Upon going there, he saw several men practicing combat with real weapons. A knight with cheek whiskers was behaving very arrogantly and was beating a boy lying on the ground. Seeing Duncan wearing a long sword, the knight challenged him to a fight as well. But Duncan did not want to get involved in any trouble before the tournament began. So, he ignored the knight's taunts and rode away. He found a secluded spot and stepped into the river to wash his body and clothes. As evening approached, Duncan returned to the tent, but Manfred Dondarrion was still asleep. Out of curiosity, he peeked into the woman's tent and saw a naked woman lying on a table, covered only by thin black muslin, while the other woman arranged food upon her body. It appeared that a special feast was being prepared for a high lord. Since Manfred had not yet awakened, Duncan wandered around outside the camp. He saw a beautiful girl telling stories of knights slaying dragons. When the storyteller girl's eyes met Duncan's, she shyly turned away and exited the tent. Suddenly, he ran into the small boy who had been beaten that morning. Speaking with him, Duncan learned that the tyrannical knight was Steffon Fossoway, heir to House Fossoway. The small boy was his cousin, and since he had no inheritance, he was used as a practice dummy or punching bag for his elder cousin. The small boy took a liking to Duncan and led him to a very magnificent tent. At a glance, Duncan spotted Lionel, the heir to Storm's End. This man was incredibly brave and, due to his habit of booming laughter during battle, was named the Laughing Storm. Naturally, he sat in the seat of honor, and everyone listened to him in silence. Duncan was eating at a table by himself. Around him, women were dancing on tables and there was laughter. But Lionel sat in the main seat with a look of annoyance. Suddenly, a bearded man next to him beckoned to Duncan. Lionel did not like Duncan because, despite being so tall, he sat hunched over like a shy bride on her wedding night, which made Lionel want to punch him. Duncan explained, "Where I grew up, remaining unnoticed was the way to survive." Lionel asked him, "What gift have you brought to my tent? Those who come here either come to ask for help or to pick a fight. Since you are in my tent..." Lionel paused, then said, "No, wait. Why are you having breakfast in my tent?" Lionel was somewhat defeated by Duncan's simplicity. He dragged Duncan to the dance floor and intentionally tried to step on this foolish giant's feet. But Duncan was unexpectedly agile. Lionel tried for a long time but couldn't hit his mark. Instead, he got a good stomp from Duncan. Luckily, he didn't get angry. Rather, he asked Duncan to listen to stories of the Stormlands. Duncan also shared his current worries. He was actually afraid of losing in the tournament and not getting back his horses, which were his last assets. Just then, Duncan spotted Manfred Dondarrion. He hurriedly chased after him and introduced himself. But the man didn't want to give the time of day to someone so poor, merely stating he knew no Sir Arlen. Manfred said with annoyance, 800 warriors went into the mountains with my uncle. Is it possible for us to remember who was wounded or who died? Without a guarantor, Duncan could not participate in the tournament. Disappointed, he returned to the lakeshore. There he found Egg frying fish on the grass. He had washed Duncan's blanket and was tending to the horses. He had an air about him as if to say, if he told you his real home address, you would be terrified. Duncan saw that the little boy was quite useful, and his appetite wasn't very large either. Finally, he agreed to keep him as his squire or assistant. To think, a prince had now become a peasant's servant. The little prince did not yet know that his friendship with Duncan would remain unbreakable for a lifetime. Duncan decided not to go back to Manfred, but to look for someone else who might have known Arlen. He first went to the Lord of House Tyrell and explained that Sir Arlen was a true knight. He was quiet, humble, and experienced on the battlefield, yet never picked fights unnecessarily. While alive, Arlen helped others, but he never became rich from it. Sir Arlen had no land or children. He simply wanted to live freely and never complained of his hardships. After Lord Leo Tyrell went blind, Sir Arlen joined your forces and fought shoulder to shoulder with your brothers at the Battle of the Redgrass Field. His squire, who was his own nephew, also died in that battle. Arlen often said that the Tyrell Lord had taught him that hedge knights were the connecting bridge between common subjects and lords. Just when Duncan was nearly in despair, musical instruments resounded. Duncan quickly looked toward the bridge and saw a banner featuring a red three-headed dragon on a black background. Fans of Ice and Fire surely know this is the symbol of House Targaryen, who became rulers of the Seven Kingdoms due to their ability to tame dragons. Seeing his own family members, Egg quickly asked Duncan for permission to go to the camp to see if thieves had stolen the remaining 2 horses. Duncan handed the horse he was holding to Egg and peered into the crowd. Prince Baelor Targaryen, known as Baelor Breakspear, was the rightful heir to the Iron Throne. He was known for his honesty, valor, and knightly spirit. Baelor had mainly come to Ashford to search for his missing nephews. One lord was in a foul mood. His horse nearly kicked a man to death. Kind-hearted Duncan stepped forward and calmed the horse. Sir Roland Crakehall of the Kingsguard and his friend Sir Donal approached him and joked, "Being beautiful often comes with a fickle temper." Duncan thought they were speaking of the horse, so he said, "This little creature has become a bit excited." The knights replied with annoyance, "We are not talking about the horse. We are speaking of Prince Aerion Targaryen." Aerion was Maker's second son, the older brother of Egg. Sir Donal asked Duncan which family he belonged to, and why he reeked of low birth. Duncan, fearing exposure, said his family was nothing worth mentioning. Sir Donal assured him, "Do not fear, our Darklyn family also rose from low beginnings. A few decades ago, we too were carpenters." Duncan did not understand the meaning of his words. He followed a Targaryen servant inside. Lord Penrose's daughter caught Duncan eavesdropping, but she whispered, "Prince Maker's son is missing, perhaps even dead. This could be a major cause for war. Seeing Duncan's vacant expression, the girl said no more. Inside the room, Baelor was speaking with his brother Maker. Their conversation revealed that in addition to Maker's youngest son Egg, his eldest son Daeron was also missing. Just then, Maker spotted Duncan hiding behind the door and asked why he was lurking there. Compelled, Duncan revealed his plight and asked Prince Baelor if he remembered Sir Arlan. Many years ago, at a tournament in King's Landing, Arlan had defeated the Lord of Stockworth. Unbelievably, Baelor remembered it. He further added that in his youth, Sir Arlan had defeated the former Lord of House Lannister. Standing nearby, Maker said in amazement, "Brother, you remember a nameless man from 16 years ago?" Baelor replied, "That time at Storm's End, the Baratheon Duke held a grand event to celebrate the birth of his grandson. In the draw, Sir Arlan became my opponent in the first round. He broke 4 lances before unhorsing me. It was Baelor's habit to know his opponents. He never belittled a knight based on lineage. Even after defeating Arlan, Baelor did not take his horse or armor. Thus, Arlan always told Duncan that Prince Baelor possessed the soul of a true knight. One day, the 7 kingdoms would be safe in his hands. Regardless, Baelor agreed to vouch for Duncan and apologized for his brother's poor behavior. His sons have been lost on the road, so he is afraid. I am certain they will not be captured. Duncan's emotional intelligence, or ability to read the room, was nearly zero. An observer might think he was intentionally provoking Baelor. As he was leaving, Baelor called out to Duncan and asked, "Are you of Sir Arlan's blood?" By law, only one's own children can inherit a knight's sigil. This meant Duncan would have to create a new symbol or design for himself. Duncan expressed his thanks and went to the tent of the girl who performed puppet shows. Little Egg was sitting there, listening to stories of new knights. The girl was a very skilled artisan. She had painted and crafted all the puppets and equipment herself. So, Duncan requested the girl to paint a new design for his shield, to paint something new over Arlan's sigil. But Duncan could not think of what to paint. Standing nearby, Egg suggested, "How about painting that large elm tree by the river?" Because Arlan was buried beneath that tree, and Duncan began his journey from there. The elm tree is the beginning of this journey. It was truly a good idea. The girl agreed as well. Foolish Duncan felt a bit ashamed for acting awkwardly in front of the person he fancied. Egg consoled him, "You are both very tall. You have much in common." In truth, Egg was jealous of Duncan's height, as he was much skinnier and weaker than others his age. He did not know if he would be able to become a knight when he grew up. Duncan said, "What does that matter? Everyone says I am a fool, yet I have become a knight." Just then, the laughing Storm Lionel arrived and dragged Duncan away to participate in a game of tug-of-war. Egg followed behind to watch the fun. Duncan's massive physique was not for nothing. He stood at the very end like a pillar and helped Lionel win. The tournament was set to begin the next day. Duncan could not fit into Arlan's small armor, so he went to a blacksmith to have new armor made. But the blacksmith asked for a high price. A single helmet cost 800 silver pieces. Even if Duncan sold everything he owned, he wouldn't have that much. The blacksmith saw the boy wasn't lying, so he said, "I will melt down Arlan's old armor to make a new set, but the labor will cost 600 silver pieces." Duncan had only 2 coins in his pocket. The blacksmith refused to offer any discount. The money had to be paid by tomorrow. Helpless, Duncan sold one of his horses. Now there was no turning back for him. Sir Arlan had never won a tournament in 60 years. If Duncan could become the champion of Ashford, perhaps a great family would take him into their service, maybe even the Targaryens. Hearing this, Egg made a slight face. Finally, the war horn sounded. A flood of people swarmed into the arena like ants. Duncan lifted little Egg onto his shoulders. The boy spotted his father at a glance and began to worry inwardly, but when he saw the knights enter the field, he shook off all his concerns and began to enjoy the spectacle. Prince Valar Targaryen entered the field swiftly. He was the second heir to the throne. Everyone had high hopes for Valar. As the horns blew, the knights charged at one another. They drove their lances with full force, aiming to unhorse their enemies. This violent and bloody battle sent a wave of excitement through everyone. Egg asked Duncan to put him down and pushed through the crowd to get to the very front. The atmosphere of the tournament suddenly made Duncan nervous. He was completely different from Egg, who was trembling with excitement. He recalled the words of Arlan, who used to sleep in the woods, who died on a muddy road, and who never received respect from others. Yet, it was this Arlen who had raised Duncan and molded him into an honest man. Despite all this, the nobles did not remember his name. This Ashford tournament would deeply influence the future of Duncan and the Targaryen family. The wheel of fate had begun to turn slowly, pushing them toward an unknown future. Episodes 1 and 2 of Night of the Seven Kingdoms end here. For the upcoming episodes, please like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. See you in another new episode. Thank you, everyone.